Alright, so here's the deal. I've been working at Zane's Subs for a while now. It's a small shop, nothing too flashy, but it pays the bills. Riverton, the town I live in, is mostly quiet. Nothing major happens here except for when the college kids come in for the fall and spring semesters. Then it's a different story. You get the usual chaos, the drunk crowds, the loud orders, the tips that make it all worth it in the end. But that's the norm. Or at least it was the norm. Until that one night, I had been cruising through my shift, just like any other late night. The regulars were all tipsy, having their usual midnight cravings. I was just going through the motions, doing what I always do, taking the orders, hopping on the bike, and zipping through the town. Riverton isn't exactly a big city, so it's easy to get around on a bike, even at night. But you know how it is when you're working late. Everything starts to feel like you're in autopilot mode, and by the time it's nearing 1:45 a.m., you're just ready to clock out and head home. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the last delivery. Just a few more minutes and I'll be done. But of course that's when things start to go sideways, right? Because what's a late night shift without something going wrong? I should have known better. I always knew better. But there I was, stuck taking that last order like I had no other choice. It's funny, isn't it? You get into the routine and then something comes out of nowhere and you're left standing there thinking, this is the moment when everything changes. Maybe I should have just said no. But we don't get to say no, do we? I knew this street like the back of my hand. Same familiar route, same quiet houses, same predictable late-night vibes. Nothing special. I'd done this 100 times before, and I figured this one would be no different. But as I pulled up to the house, something felt off. It wasn't anything I could pinpoint at first, just this strange vibe that settled over me the second I got there. I knocked on the door. Nothing. All right. No big deal. People order food. They get distracted. Or they forget about it. Happens all the time. So, I knocked again, a little louder this time, trying to keep the annoyance in check. Still, nothing. Now that was a bit unusual. Maybe it was just one of those college kids passed out drunk, or someone who'd gone to bed early, who knows. But there was this heavy silence. I stood there, waiting for the sound of someone coming to the door. But it was just quiet, and then I saw him, across the street, just on the edge of the yard, behind some bushes. At first, I thought it was a trick of the light, just some random shadow from the street lamp. But no, there was definitely someone there, crouched down low, barely visible in the darkness. It wasn't obvious at first, but I could feel my stomach tighten. I told myself it was nothing, probably some drunk kid trying to mess with me. Or just someone waiting for a friend, right? But the thing was, he wasn't moving, just sitting there, watching. And that's when I knew. This wasn't just another late-night college kid stumbling home after a party. No, this was different. I couldn't explain why, but I felt like I was being watched, like I wasn't supposed to be here. And whatever was happening, it was far from innocent. It didn't make sense, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone. So there I was, standing outside, still waiting for someone to answer the door. It felt like I'd been at this place forever, even though it hadn't been that long. I was starting to wonder if I'd just end up taking the order back to the shop. No big deal. It happened. But then, just as I was about to knock again, a guy walked by. I assumed he was a neighbor, but you know how it is. You can't always tell who lives where around here. He looked casual. Too casual, really. Like it was totally normal to see someone hanging out on a quiet street at 1:45 in the morning. Maybe he was just out for a walk, or maybe he was heading home from wherever he'd been. But the way he looked at me, no, not just looked at me, but studied me, it made my skin crawl. First, he glanced at me, then at the house, then back at me again, almost like he was trying to figure something out. He asked what I was doing, which struck me as odd. Because it's pretty clear what I was doing, right? I'm standing there, holding a bag of food, knocking on a door. But he asked anyway, in this kind of way that made it sound like he already knew. It was like he was trying to place me in a bigger picture that I couldn't see. Did he know something I didn't? Was he just a nosy local? It was hard to tell, but I wasn't comfortable with it. He didn't hang around for long though. After a few awkward seconds of eye contact, he just walked off. No big deal, right? Except for the fact that I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right about that interaction. I wasn't sure if it was the way he looked at me, or the fact that I just felt like I was being sized up, but I couldn't help thinking I'd just encountered something I wasn't supposed to, and honestly I didn't want to know what that something was. I don't know why, but at that point, I was just done. This wasn't my first late-night delivery, and it wasn't my first time dealing with drunk college kids who couldn't seem to handle their alcohol or their orders for that matter. But it felt different this time. The guy who finally answered the door looked like he'd been hit by a truck. Not literally, but you get what I mean. He was slurring his words, rubbing his face like he was trying to wake up from some bad dream. Great. Just what I needed. He mumbled something about his roommate being the one who ordered, but of course, his roommate was too drunk to get out of bed and answer the door. So here I was, stuck waiting for some random guy's passed out roommate to wake up enough to deal with a sandwich and a soda. This was the part of the job I hated. The endless waiting, the excuses, the "oh, sorry, my friend ordered." But now he's passed out. Seriously? I'd been through it 100 times, but for some reason this time felt worse. I had no idea why, but the frustration was building up. No idea why, but the frustration was building up. I knocked again. Louder this time. I could feel each knock echoing in my head. What if no one came? What if I was stuck here, wasting time? The thought of having to take this food back was driving me crazy. That's when it hit me. What if I was stuck in some weird cycle, some sort of bad routine that never ends? A job where I was always at the mercy of these people who couldn't get their act together. I shouldn't have stayed. I should have just left. But I didn't. I waited and waited, each second dragging on, as I thought about how badly I just wanted to get out of there and finish my shift. But then, in the back of my mind, a small voice kept asking, what if this is how it ends? What if this was one of those moments where things spiral out of control? I couldn't shake the thought. The guy finally went upstairs to wake his roommate, leaving me standing there, still holding the damn food bag. For a second, I thought it was over. I thought this would be one of those annoying but ultimately harmless delivery situations, the kind where the guy comes back down, signs for the food, and I get to leave. Simple. Routine. But no, that uneasy feeling of being watched. It didn't go away. It stuck with me, like a shadow I couldn't shake off. And every time I tried to distract myself by looking at the door or my watch, my eyes kept drifting back to the bushes across the street. It wasn't even something I could ignore anymore. That figure, the one I had tried to brush off as some drunk college kid or whatever, was still there. But now, he was closer. Was he really closer? Or was I just imagining it? The street was dim, and the shadows blurred together, but there was something about the way the figure had moved that made my heart skip. I couldn't tell if I was losing it, or if the guy had actually shifted position, but it felt like he was no longer just hiding in the bushes. He was standing up a little more, almost like he was getting ready to step into the light. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe it was just a trick of the streetlight. But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining it. I kept pretending not to notice. I kept my eyes on the door, waiting for the guy to come back down. But the fear was growing inside me. It was like a knot tightening in my stomach, and my brain was screaming at me that something wasn't right. I just wanted to leave, but I couldn't, not yet. I had to get the food to the right person, right? Just a little longer, until everything made sense. But it didn't. It wasn't making sense anymore, and I could feel it all the way down in my bones. Finally, he came back down, signed for the food, and for a brief moment I thought I was in the clear. Relief, right? I could almost feel the weight lifting off my shoulders, the end of a long night inching closer. Just one last thing to do, hop on my bike and ride back to the shop. No big deal, but of course that's when it all flipped. The second I turned to leave, that's when I saw him. The guy from across the street. He wasn't standing in the shadows anymore. No, this time he was charging at me, sprinting toward me like a damn animal. I didn't have time to think. My brain was still trying to process what was going on. I mean, what the hell was this happening? Was he really running straight at me? My eyes locked on him for a second. Hood pulled over his head, face completely hidden in the darkness. But there was something else, something that made my stomach drop. A glint, something metallic in his hand. I don't even know if it was a knife, a bottle, or some kind of weapon. Honestly, my brain couldn't process it fast enough. My body was already moving before I could get a clear thought in my head. I jumped onto my bike, but the fear was way ahead of me. Every second felt like it was counting down to something worse, something that I knew I couldn't outrun if I didn't move fast enough. It was like everything around me slowed down, but my heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear myself think. I didn't know what he wanted. I didn't know what was about to happen. All I knew was that I had to get out, fast. My body didn't even give me the option to question it. Just survival mode kicking in. Something told me if I didn't move now, I wouldn't have the chance. I made it back. Eventually, my legs were shaky. My chest felt like it was about to burst from the frantic pedaling. I couldn't even hear anything except for the blood pounding in my ears, and I had to keep checking over my shoulder every few seconds, like the guy was somehow going to appear from the shadows and pull me off my bike. But he didn't. Somehow, I made it back to the shop. The door swung open, and I just wheeled my bike in like it was any other night. But nothing felt normal anymore. My heart was still hammering in my chest as I locked up my bike in the back, the adrenaline still coursing through me like I was in the middle of some kind of action movie. I didn't tell anyone at the store. What was I supposed to say? How could I explain what had just happened? I didn't even get a good look at the guy. Hell, I wasn't even sure if I'd recognize him if I saw him again. But one thing was for sure. I knew something wasn't right. That feeling of being watched, the guy chasing me, the way it all felt off from the very beginning, I couldn't shake it. That gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach that told me I wasn't imagining it. That something could have gone horribly wrong if I hadn't gotten away. I didn't call the cops. Didn't even tell anyone at work. It felt pointless. What could I tell them? I didn't have a description. I didn't have anything concrete. But I still wondered, what if he was still out there? What if he followed me? What if he was watching me even now? I went home, put the bike in the trunk of my car, and drove in silence, my mind racing. When I got home, I didn't even feel relief. Just a kind of numbness. A reminder that no matter how safe you think you are, no matter how small or quiet your town is, things can go wrong. And sometimes, it's the people you least expect who are hiding in plain sight. And I don't know if I'll ever look at this job the same way again. It was late. I could feel the weight of the night pressing down on me as I picked up my last delivery of the evening from Dante's Pizzeria. I'd been at it all night, zipping in and out of neighborhoods, handing over pizza after pizza. Nothing too out of the ordinary. But this one? It should have been simple, I thought. Just 2 pizzas. Kiter Creek Road. Easy. Or at least, that's what I told myself. It didn't take long before I realized I was wrong. The road wasn't what I expected. Not by a long shot. The map Tony gave me was old. I mean, really old. It barely worked in the dim light of my car. And to make things worse, my phone was one of those flip phones. No GPS. Yeah, I know. I was living in the Stone Age. So I had to rely on an ancient book of maps, yellowed pages, barely readable. I pulled over twice, trying to figure it out. I thought I had it for a second, but each time I checked, I only seemed to get further from where I needed to be. The more I drove, the darker it got. And I mean pitch black, like there weren't even any street lights. I swear something about that road was off. The trees were way too thick, the kind of woods you only see in those old horror movies. It felt like the whole world was closing in around me. I should have turned around, but I didn't. Something kept pushing me forward. Maybe it was the thought of finishing my shift and getting the hell out of there. Maybe it was just stubbornness. Either way, I wasn't going to stop now, but I was starting to wonder what exactly I was getting myself into. At that point, I was done guessing. It was getting too late, the road too quiet, and I couldn't afford to keep wasting time. I grabbed the order slip again and dialed the number. It rang and rang forever, it seemed. I kept staring at the road, thinking I should have just turned back, but no. The thought of getting lost even more, or worse, Having to go back to the pizzeria empty-handed kept me going. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, someone picked up. His voice was low, deep. It wasn't harsh, but it was too calm. Slow, I can't even describe it right. He spoke like he had all the time in the world. Each word stretched out, deliberate. At first, I thought it was just the isolation getting to me. But the way he spoke made me uneasy. There was something off about it. He told me his place was hard to find. He didn't just say it's tricky or it's in a secluded area. No, he gave me specifics. A dirt trail, a narrow one too easy to miss. And the way he said it, like he knew I'd screw up and that I needed his guidance to get it right. I should have asked more questions. I should have been smarter. But something about his tone made me just follow his instructions. I turned off the main road onto this tight, unpaved trail that was barely visible in the dim light. I mean, the whole place felt like something out of a bad dream. The more I drove, the more uneasy I got. Why did he sound so sure? And why did he have to describe the trail so thoroughly? It felt like he was watching me, like he knew exactly where I was, even though I was just a few miles from civilization. But I didn't stop. I kept going, despite that gnawing feeling in the pit of my stomach. I could feel the tension building as I navigated that narrow dirt trail. It was getting tighter, the trees closing in on both sides, like they were trying to swallow me whole. The only sound was the crunch of gravel beneath my tires. My headlights barely cut through the thick darkness ahead. That's when I saw him, a figure standing off to the side near a broken-down fence. At first I thought I'd imagined it, but no, there he was, just standing there, not moving. His clothes were ragged, like he'd been out there for way too long. I don't know how to describe it, but he looked wrong. His skin was pale, and his hair wild, as though he hadn't cared about grooming in a long time. He wasn't just standing there like a regular person either. There was something about the way he was positioned, almost too still, as if he were part of the woods. He waved. It wasn't a normal wave. It was slow, like he was just going through the motions without really caring if I saw him. But it was the smile that got me. It was wide, way too wide, like it stretched unnaturally across his face. It wasn't just strange, it was unsettling. And then he spoke. He asked if I was heading to the cabin at the end of the road. That question hit me hard. It was too specific, like he knew exactly where I was going. But how? He wasn't anywhere near the end of the road, and there was no reason for him to be asking me. It didn't make sense, but somehow it felt like he was waiting for me. I told him I was in a hurry and quickly drove off, trying to shake off that feeling. But the whole time I could feel his eyes on me, boring into the back of my skull. Even after I glanced in the rearview mirror, I swear I could still feel him staring at me. He never moved. Was he even real? After what felt like an eternity, I finally made it. The road opened up into this small, unnerving clearing, and there it was. The house. I'm not sure what I expected, but it wasn't this. It looked like it had been forgotten by time, old and decrepit, like something straight out of a ghost story. The only light came from a single window, where a faint orange glow flickered. It was eerie, not warm. It felt wrong, like the house was barely holding on to whatever life it had left. And then I saw it, an old, rusted pickup truck sitting in the driveway. It was parked like it had been there for ages, untouched by the outside world. No other cars, no sign of life anywhere. The truck looked like it was part of the scenery, as if it belonged there, a permanent fixture in a place that had long been abandoned by anyone who cared. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into something I shouldn't, but I was there for a reason, right? Pizza's gotta be delivered, no matter how strange the situation. I parked the car, grabbed the pizzas, and made my way toward the front door. The whole time, I kept thinking about turning around, but I didn't. The door didn't even have a doorbell. Just a door, old and creaky. I hesitated for a second, the weirdness of the whole situation creeping up on me again. It felt wrong, like I wasn't supposed to be there. But what else could I do? I wasn't about to leave without delivering the food. So, I knocked. The sound echoed in the quiet night. Too loud, too empty. I stood there, holding the pizzas, waiting for something, anything, but nothing came. Just that silence, hanging thick in the air. Something about that silence made my skin crawl. The door creaked open, just a crack. At first I thought it was the wind, but no, it was too deliberate, too controlled. There, staring at me from the gap, was just one eye. Nothing else. Just a single eye, peeking out from behind the door. My heart skipped a beat. I don't know why it unsettled me so much. Maybe it was the way the eye glinted in the dim light, or how it seemed to study me, as if it knew exactly who I was. But it wasn't just the eye that threw me off. It was the whole thing. The fact that this guy wasn't fully opening the door. Why only show one eye? Why was he so cautious? He spoke next, confirming the order. It was the same voice from the phone call, deep, slow, deliberate, but something was different in the way he said it. He paused, a beat that lasted too long, like he was weighing each word. The pause made me stop. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that I was missing something important. But before I could dwell on it, he asked if I had the pizzas in a way that made me second guess whether I'd actually delivered the right order. It was such a simple question, but the way he asked it made me feel off. I told him I had the pizzas, of course. It was too late to back out now, right? He didn't invite me in right away though. Instead, he just told me to come in for the payment. And for some reason I hesitated. Why? I mean, what was the worst that could happen? Still, something about the whole situation, it wasn't right. Something didn't add up. But I wasn't about to stand out here all night. So I stepped inside, even though my gut was screaming at me not to. The second I stepped inside, I knew I'd made a mistake. The air hit me like a wall, thick with an overwhelming stench. It wasn't just the smell of old, neglected things. No, this was different. It was like something had died in here a long time ago, and the rot had never left. The house felt like it hadn't been lived in for years, maybe decades. The air was stale, stagnant, like time itself had stopped at the threshold. Every breath I took felt heavier, filled with something I couldn't quite identify but knew was wrong. Looking around, it was as if the house was holding on to every scrap of its past. The floors were littered with these metal sheets, random pieces of scrap, almost like someone was trying to patch up the place, but never quite finished the job. I couldn't even see the floor properly. It was covered in these disjointed makeshift repairs. The whole place seemed to be falling apart, like it was trying to hold itself together with whatever it had left, but it was losing the battle. The furniture looked ancient, the kind of stuff you'd see in a museum, the kind you don't want to touch. It wasn't just old, it was frozen in time, trapped in an era that felt long past. Everything had that unsettling, dusty look, like it had been abandoned, like the people who lived here just left. And then there was the sound. The music, from a record player in the corner, crackled in the silence. It was one of those old machines with the big horn at the top. The music was faded, slow, dragging itself through the air like it didn't belong either. But that wasn't even the worst part. As I stood there taking in the surreal mess of the place, I saw him. The man moving down the hall, his back to me. But something wasn't right. He was moving, slowly, deliberately. The way his hands touched his body was wrong, almost like he wasn't aware of what he was doing. He was running his fingers over himself, feeling every inch of his skin, lost in some kind of strange trance. I should have turned around and left right then, but I couldn't. Something kept me rooted in place, my body stiff with discomfort. And the worst part, it felt like I wasn't supposed to be there, like I'd walked into a private moment I wasn't meant to see. At that point, I couldn't take it anymore. I was done. But just as I was about to turn and leave, something shifted. He called out a name, Randall. It was loud, clear, and it wasn't like before. The voice wasn't slow or deliberate anymore. It was sharp, commanding, and it sent a chill straight down my spine. That's when I realized I needed to get the hell out of there. I couldn't stay another second. My feet moved before my mind could catch up, heading straight for the door. But as I glanced down the hallway one last time, my heart stopped. There he was, the man who had been lost in his strange movements before, now just standing there facing me. He wasn't moving, just staring in a way that felt like it was going to burn through me. I didn't wait for anything else. I turned and bolted for the door, slamming it behind me without a second thought. I don't know how I managed to get back to my car so fast, but I did. My heart was pounding in my chest, like I'd just sprinted a marathon. I threw the pizzas onto the passenger seat. No care for the order at that point, and just hit the gas. But the whole way back to the car I felt it, that feeling, like someone was right behind me, watching me. It didn't leave when I sped down that dirt driveway either. When I glanced back at the house in my rearview mirror, my stomach dropped. The door was wide open again, like someone was waiting for me to look. I didn't care about the pizza anymore. All I cared about was getting out. When I finally made it back to Dante's Pizzeria, I couldn't wait to tell Tony what happened. I don't know why I thought he'd take me seriously. He wasn't mad, of course, but everyone else, they were more intrigued than concerned. They laughed it off, joked about how weird the people out there were. But I couldn't laugh. Not after what I'd seen, not after what I'd felt. That house, those people, there was something wrong with it. With them, every night since, I've dreamed of that one eye, the way it watched me from behind the door, just before it closed. The man's face still haunts me, peeking from the shadows. I don't get it. I probably never will. So let me start by saying I really don't know why I agreed to take that late night shift for DoorDash. It's one of those things you do when the bills are stacking up and you're desperate for extra cash. But honestly, I wasn't in the mood. I could have just stayed home, but the pay was higher at night, and I knew it meant I'd be able to make a few extra bucks with fewer cars on the road. So I grabbed the order from this little diner in Durham, and at first it seemed like just another quick run. I thought, how bad could it be? Just drop off some food, get paid, and head back. But man, as I drove further out, it quickly became clear this wasn't the usual delivery. The streets, once lined with streetlights, started to get quieter and darker. I passed one house, then another, but the farther I went, the more isolated it felt. The houses started getting spaced farther apart. It was like I was leaving the main part of the city behind and heading into some forgotten part of the world. The kind of place where you'd expect to see more wildlife than people. The trees got thicker, and the farmland spread out, like something straight out of a horror movie. I kept thinking, maybe this is fine, maybe it's just another part of town. But then the road got narrower, the houses fewer, and I saw the sign, dead end. And that's when I started feeling that gut punch of anxiety. I didn't even know where I was going anymore, but I couldn't back out now. The GPS told me the address was just ahead, but something about this felt off, and I couldn't shake that feeling as I rolled up to the end of the road. When I finally got there, I couldn't see anything beyond the headlights of my car. The street was so dark, it felt like it was holding its breath. It wasn't just dark, it was too dark, like the kind of darkness that doesn't belong in a neighborhood, but in some forgotten part of the world. The kind of place where time has just stopped and nothing has been touched in years. I had the feeling I was the first person to drive down this road in ages. The house I was supposed to deliver to looked abandoned. No lights, no movement, nothing. It was like they had left in a hurry and never came back. There was no welcoming porch light, no sign of life, not even a car in the driveway, just this lonely, decaying house sitting in the dark. Even the grass around it seemed to be growing wild, brushing against my shins as I stepped out of the car. It was like the house was a relic, a forgotten part of the world left to rot away. I tried to push that creeping feeling aside. I told myself, you're just being paranoid. Maybe the customer likes it dark and quiet, lives off the beaten path. Still, something about the whole situation felt wrong. It wasn't just the silence, it was the feeling that I shouldn't be here. I kept telling myself it was probably nothing, that I'd just drop off the food and get out of there. But the longer I stood there, the more uneasy I felt. I knew I was already regretting this, but I figured I'd just push through, knock on the door, and get out of there as quickly as I could. I didn't realize just how much worse it was about to get. I'm standing there on the porch, already regretting my decision to be out here. The silence is thick, almost oppressive. It's the kind of quiet that messes with your head. Makes you start questioning every sound you hear. The kind of quiet that feels like it's waiting for something to happen. And then, out of nowhere, I hear it. A car, but not just any car. It's moving way too slowly. At first, I can barely see the headlights through the trees, but I can hear the engine winding down as it gets closer, like it's trying to sneak up on me. I don't know why, but my heart starts pounding in my chest. My instincts are screaming at me to move, to get back to the car, but I don't. I stay frozen on the porch, watching the road. The car creeps past the house, almost as if it's taking its time to make sure I see it. And then it slows even more, crawling right in front of the house, like it's stopping to watch me. The headlights shine right at me, and for a split second, it feels like the world has just paused. No movement, no sound, just the car, parked in front of me, and me, standing there like an idiot. The silence is deafening. No one gets out, no one waves, nothing happens. It's just this car, sitting there, staring at me, like some kind of warning I'm too slow to understand. Finally, after what feels like forever, the car slowly drives off again. No rush, no sudden acceleration, just a smooth, deliberate exit. It's the kind of thing that doesn't sit right with you. Why did it stop? What was that about? I can't shake the feeling that I was being watched, but I have no idea by who, what the hell was going on. I'm standing there, staring at the door, trying to make sense of everything. I hit the doorbell, but nothing happens. I don't even hear a chime, no movement, not even a shadow behind the curtains. I try to shake it off, tell myself I'm just overthinking it. But this quiet, it's too much. I wait for a moment, but still nothing. So I pull out my phone and message the customer, asking if they're ready to grab the food. The reply comes pretty fast, but it's strange, short, and almost curt. "Give me a second," it says. Fine, I think. Maybe they're busy, but something about the tone doesn't sit right with me. Still, I try to ignore it. I stand there, staring at the dark windows, waiting for some sign of life, for a flicker of light, anything. But it doesn't come. No movement. Nothing. It's like the place is frozen in time. Time feels like it's dragging. My patience is wearing thin. I ask again, maybe a little more impatiently this time, for them to confirm the address. I can't explain it, but the more I wait, the more the unease settles in. It's just too quiet. It doesn't feel right. And then, as if it was pulled straight out of the dark air, I hear it. A voice, but it doesn't sound like it's coming from the house. It's out there somewhere, in the blackness around me. "I see you." That's it. No explanation, no follow-up. Just those 3 words. The voice doesn't sound like it's coming from inside. It's hollow, distant. I can't even tell which direction it came from. My blood runs cold. At that moment I freeze. What the hell just happened? Who's out there? I start to wonder if I'm in some kind of setup. Maybe I've walked right into something I shouldn't have. Is someone playing some sick joke? I don't know, but it doesn't feel like a coincidence. At this point, I'd had enough. The whole situation felt off from the beginning, but now it was crossing into something I couldn't ignore. I was done waiting, so I decided to leave the food on the porch and get the hell out of there. The sooner I left, the better. But as I turned to head back to the car, something caught my eye. I froze. Both tires on the left side of the car were slashed. I couldn't even process it at first, but then the hissing sound hit me, the unmistakable sound of air leaking fast. The pressure in my chest built up as I walked closer. The air was coming out, and the noise, it made my stomach drop. There was no way this was an accident. No way this was just some random thing that happened. My brain couldn't even catch up with what I was seeing. I felt like I was in some kind of sick nightmare, and I couldn't wake up. I didn't want to check the other side, but I did it anyway, knowing deep down it was just as bad. Both right side tires slashed. I felt like I was suffocating. I was trapped, completely. My mind raced, scrambling to think through the next move. Should I call the police? What would I even tell them? That my tires were slashed in the middle of nowhere by who knows who? Would they even take it seriously? Or should I just run? Should I leave the car and take off on foot, find someone to help? But what if I'm just making myself more vulnerable by doing that? Panic started to sink in, and it was hard to think straight. The darkness around me seemed to close in, and I was torn. Stay in the car where I at least have some kind of shelter, or step out into the unknown, into the dark, not knowing what's waiting out there. Everything felt wrong. I could almost feel someone watching me, waiting. I didn't even have time to process the panic before it hit me. Out of nowhere, they were there. 4 people surrounding my car, their faces hidden behind masks. I didn't even see them approach. It's like they materialized from the darkness, and in that moment, I froze. I couldn't move. My mind went blank. What was I supposed to do? The fear took over, and all I could think about was how bad this was going to get. They didn't say anything at first. They just stood there staring at me, their presence filling the space, making it feel like I was suffocating. I could feel the weight of their gaze, but I couldn't see their eyes. I couldn't read them. My heartbeat was so loud in my ears, it was the only thing I could hear. I didn't know if they had weapons or what, but I sure as hell wasn't going to find out. They just stood there, staring, and then one of them finally spoke. "Get out of the car." The voice was sharp, commanding. There was no negotiation in it. I knew I had no choice. I unlocked the door, my hands shaking so bad I almost fumbled with the handle. Before I could even react, they yanked me out of the car. My body hit the ground hard, and the pain shot through me. The next thing I knew, they were on me, hitting, kicking, taking everything. My wallet, my phone, my smartwatch, my shoes, even. It was over in seconds, but it felt like hours. I couldn't fight back. I was just there, lying on the cold, hard dirt, trying to make sense of it, but I couldn't. Everything hurt, and my mind was just racing. It wasn't real, was it? But by the time I tried to gather my thoughts, they were already gone, fading into the darkness, leaving me alone in that spot. Confused, shaken, and in pain. I don't even know how long I was out. It could have been minutes. It could have been hours. But when I came to, everything hurt. My head was spinning, and my body felt like it had been hit by a freight train. I couldn't make sense of where I was, or what had just happened. It took everything in me just to push myself to my feet, and when I did, the world around me seemed to blur. I stumbled, dazed, toward the nearest house I could find. There was a light on in the window, and I knocked, hoping for some kind of help. A woman answered, and in a daze I asked to use her phone. It felt so surreal, like I was still trapped in some weird nightmare, but I had to make the call. She let me use her phone to dial 911. The police arrived pretty quickly, but it felt like I was still stuck in that moment, still processing everything, as if it was happening to someone else. How did this even happen? How did I let myself get in this situation? The officers asked me questions, but I could barely focus. They seemed to be following a clear process, but all I could do was replay the night over and over in my head. They traced the delivery through the app and found that it had been linked to a guy named Mark, someone who had apparently lost his phone and wallet weeks ago. Whoever had found them used his information to set this whole thing up, leading me right into their trap. It was all planned. The whole thing. In the end, they got away with it all. My car, my stuff, everything. I was left standing there, feeling like an idiot, wondering what went wrong. I tried to shake it off, to move on, but the weight of that night, it never really left me. I never took another late-night delivery again. The risk just wasn't worth it.